Hello and welcome everyone to another SAP video. So in this one we are going to focus on the interviewer focus areas. Primarily the target audience is if you are one of the people who are nominated to take interviews either for your project or for your organization, then this must be something that can prove as a guideline for you. Yes, most organizations today have their own interview trainings that happen, but these are, from what I can gather, more generic as to what points need to be covered in general. But here we are going to cover a little more specific points when it comes to SAP. So, just to clarify, this would be more relevant for interviewing candidates that are 0 to around 4.5 years experience. For more experienced candidates, the interview process may be a little different, although there will be overlaps. There will be a few topics that are going to be covered from here as well. So let's dive into the topics within the interviewer focus areas. As you could see, it was mentioned the topics that we are going to look at is basics, exposure, communication, and others. So let's start with the basics. And again, before I begin, as I usually do in my videos, is this the only list? Is this the best possible list out there? I don't think so, but this can certainly prove as a good guideline for you if you are starting off interviewing candidates. So let's start with the basics. If you are interviewing for development or a BAP or a BAP on HANA, what are the ideal things that you would like to check? So try to check around data dictionary, maybe CDS views, RESTful ABAP programming. Maybe RESTful ABAP programming may be a bit advanced for people just starting off, but if they have started working on this, then you may as well delve into it. There are enhancements, forms, reports. Certainly, between 0 to 4 years interfaces, I would say is a big plus, because generally not everybody is working on these areas, especially when you're starting off your career in ABAP or development. Yeah, primary areas that these candidates would have worked on would be reports, forms, data dictionary. One thing that I would like to mention here is instead of asking a what question, try to ask a little bit of what if. For example, one of the questions in data dictionary that I like to ask is what if in a custom table which already has data records, a primary key field needs to be added. What is the process and is it possible, for example? So you can have your own set of questions and queries that you can add to this list. Again, for example, what if you want to debug a form? So these kind of queries will give you an idea whether the candidate has really worked on these areas and to what level is the candidate exposed to in these areas. The next is for functional. You can check the module specific basic configuration. Again, try and ask what if questions here. What if you want to create a sales order? What are the generic configuration or master data that need to be available? So these parameters will give you again a good idea as to what is the level of exposure of the candidate in their specific module area. Also check with them the process flow so you understand that have they only specifically worked in one area. So if they have been creating sales order, have they only created sales order or have they gone to the next level delivery? PGI, billing document, accounting, etc. I mean, I just took an example of SD, but yeah, similarly, you can check for FI, MM, and other modules as well, right? Then for basis in security, check at what level the system setup involvement has been of the candidate. Have they been, if they are from security, have they created different types of roles? Do they understand a composite role versus a single role? And the kind of issues handled. Why issues handled is mentioned is because even in a development project, they would have handled issues where the functional or the development person is facing an error and not able to run a transaction, for example. Now, with the basics topics, you may observe that there's a line mentioned generic topics like knowing transport request. So, when I say transport request, types of transport request, and if they understand what and when a transport of copies is used, when do you really do a merge, etc. I typically don't expect 0 to 4.5 year experienced candidate to know this, but if they already know it, then it's a big advantage. Job monitoring. Have they monitored job? Have they monitored failed jobs? Do they know what is the next step once a job fails? So these things again helps you understand at what project maturity level have the candidates worked on. Logs, different logs. Do they understand SLG1? Do they know um, short dumps and runtime errors, etc. So knowing these are a very big plus because these tell you that they know how to analyze an issue. At least they know how to start to analyze an issue. They may not be able to reach to the root cause. Again, this differs case to case basis. I'm not judging anybody, but you get the idea of their involvement here. Okay, so moving to the next topic in the list, that is exposure. Now here we are primarily going to check the different types of projects and the project phases that the candidate has been exposed to and worked on. So this again gives you a good metric as to where the candidate stands in terms of their understanding. Do they only know about their module, or have they also worked with other teams? So the second point talks about it: modules, submodules exposed to, a number of teams interacted with. So this also tells you that within the process flow, what all are the different kind of phases that they have worked on, what kind of testing phases have they worked on, what kind of issues have they faced. So this gives you an idea of their exposure level. Sometimes 3.5 year old resource may have been exposed to different phases. For example, they might have worked in requirements, they might have also worked in user acceptance test, they might have worked in cutover, they might have also worked with go live or post go live support. So that gives you an idea that you can probably place them at the next level, and it depends on your organizational policy if you have to, if that calls for a higher pay or a bigger position. Moving to the next topic, that is communication. So here you would need to observe the clarity of the responses and the time taken for the same. A lot of times the candidate might take very long to answer a question, which is a bit of a red flag. If you have to see, you have to observe the language and tone. Is it more of a question mark language, like are they asking you whether the answer is correct, or are they confident of what they are talking about? The candidate, from my perspective, is not expected to know everything, but it gives you an idea what is their level of knowledge, and do they understand the questions, and are they answering about close to the right answer. The last topic is others. Screen the resume for any abnormalities or achievements. This is important because it helps you prepare and plan your interview. There might be some gaps, but a lot of times these gaps must be valid. There must be a medical emergency, some family challenges. etc. But it is there is no harm in getting to know this, because your next level interviewer might want to inquire about this information, whether you have this information beforehand, if the candidate goes to the next level. And if there are any specific achievements, it is good to get that idea as well. Observe the body language, check for patterns like repetition of questions, double voice, etc. Again, not wanting to be judgmental, but unfortunately, so 90-95% of the candidates are honest, they are straightforward, but there are unfortunately some percentage of candidates that are trying to not give the interviews in the right spirit. So they are possibly taking help or using ChatGPT or something like that. So you need to keep an eye out for that. One thing that I would like to mention is the candidates sometimes may or will be nervous while answering. Don't use that as a negative point against them. It is quite natural to happen. What I would say is try to set the candidate at ease during your first 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes. Introduce yourself. Ask the candidate to introduce themselves, and then establish a bit of a rapport. Smile a bit, not a lot, so that you are able to take this forward well. If the candidate is not able to answer some topic, move on to the next. Don't pin the candidate on one topic. There might be other topics that the candidate is really good at, and maybe those are the ones that you really need to look at in the candidate in terms of their experience and knowledge. Another important point I would like to mention is, if you already have a job description in place for which the candidate is being recruited for, or being interviewed for, then your job becomes a little easier. You don't need to prepare separate list of topics. You can go through the topics from the job description and use them to prepare your questions or questionnaire. Okay, I hope this has added some value and helps you and proves to be a bit of a guideline in terms of how you interview your candidates, especially between 0 to 4.5 or 5 year experienced. Thank you.